Hello, I'm Terry Christensen, and this is Valley Politics. Today, we'll catch up on the state of the county with Joe Simitian, president of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. Later, San Jose Vice Mayor Chappie Jones will tell us what's going on in Council District 1, which is the West Side. Then on Where Are They Now, our guest is Jim Cunneen, the last Republican this county elected to the state legislature, and that was way back in 1994. All this next on Valley Politics. Welcome everyone, and welcome Supervisor Joe Simitian, President of the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you for being here, Joe. Before we talk today, let's take a quick look at what people attending your State of the County address told us when we asked them what they thought the county's top priority should be.
I feel that addressing the needs of frail, at-risk seniors in Santa Clara County should be a #1 priority.
County government's top priority should be housing and transportation.
The homeless problem.
My top concern, and the reason I'm here today, is regarding children and people of all ages with disabilities and special needs.
I think the primary challenge that the county has to face is transportation and housing.
One is transportation, one is housing, and they really go together.
I think that county government really needs to focus on ensuring affordable housing.
Above all else, housing affordability should be #1.
I think that the top priority for county government this year should be mental health and well-being.
Affordable housing for the unhoused and seniors.
Well, I think the top priority for county government should really be housing and transportation.
My feeling, the top priority for county government and the state of California is housing.
So their priorities were different from the one you set out. Only one person mentioned health care, but that was what you really emphasized in your speech. What would you say to the rest of them?
You know, I think what I would say to folks is, as I said at the State of the County, you know, for any of these other priorities to be realized, for people to have good lives no matter what their concern or top set of priorities are, good health is the necessary precondition to that. And I really did want to focus on the importance of health care, the county's role in health care, because as my grandfather told me all those years ago when I was a kid, you know, it's the most important thing. And, you know, I'm not sure people are always aware of the role the county plays. I mean, it's a huge responsibility, both in terms of dollars. I mean, it's probably a $3 billion component of our $7 billion plus budget. But, you know, we, not just at the hospital, now hospitals that we have with the acquisition of 2 new hospitals, but, you know, 8 community clinics that are part of our county operation, another 8 to 10 that are community-based nonprofits that we partner with as well. And that's before you get to the public health issues, our Better Health Pharmacy, where we dispense literally no-cost drugs. So it's a key part of the county's responsibility. And you know, you've been around the political scene for a long time. You've seen these State of the Union, State of the State, State of the County, State of the Cities. And I think it's really hard for elected officials to resist trying to give everything a once-over lightly, satisfy every constituency. And I understand that, but I thought, you know what? I think this is a time when we should focus on a particularly important part of the county's mission and talk about how we're going to take it to the next level over the course of the coming year.
And you were very inclusive. You talked about mental health, you talked about homelessness and health aspects of that, which is huge. You even talked about stress on immigrant families as
well. And again, I see health as the pervasive issue in our community and in any community, frankly. And as you know, as you're pointing out, reminding me, you know, if you're caught up in the criminal justice system, there are probably going to be some mental health issues involved. Probably 50% of the folks who are in our county jail on any given day have some kind of mental health issue. 20% of them are probably have serious mental illness of some kind. You know, if you're out there living rough in the streets as part of the homeless community, you know, at the risk of stating the obvious, homelessness is not good for your health. You know, we've got a whole set of issues in terms of the LGBTQ community here in Santa Clara County and our Getting to Zero campaign around HIV/AIDS. So, you know, as I say, I think, healthcare is something all 2 million residents of this county care about, and we need to be sort of asking ourselves, as we do a better and better job of providing more and more in the way of help, are we making sure that we're doing it for every member of the community? And I was glad I had a chance to focus on that mission.
Well, you mentioned that almost 94% of residents of the county are covered by health insurance. You set out a goal of increasing that percentage. That's going to be really hard.
It is, and a significant part of the number who remain uninsured or undocumented, and different folks will have a different point of view. My own view is I think we have an obligation to make sure that they are healthy, and I also think it's in our self-interest for the rest of the county to make sure that the folks who are here undocumented are healthy. That public health knows no document. It's we got to be mindful of these issues. So that's a particular part of the population. But look, there are folks on Medicaid, Medi-Cal who will go in and out of the system. We need to make sure that if they fall out of the system, we get them back into the system as if they're eligible. It's in everybody's interest for as many folks to be insured as we possibly can. So yeah, you're right. The low-hanging fruit, when you're at 93.5%, you've got most of the low-hanging fruit in terms of insurance coverage, but we need to take the extra step and see if we can't make even more progress.
Well, 93.5 is pretty remarkable. It has to be among the best of any county in the country, so that's something we can be pretty proud of. I guess one issue relating to health care in the county is the recently acquired hospitals, O'Connor and St. Louis. Do you anticipate problems absorbing them into the county system? And specifically, what about the nurses union, which isn't the nurses union at those hospitals?
Yeah, we for those who don't know, the two hospitals in our county, O'Connor and St. Louis, were about to be part of were part of a bankruptcy proceeding. And the question was, would anybody step up and essentially save those hospitals and save not just the beds that serve folks here in the county, the hospital beds, but save the jobs and the economic resource that they are as well. As it turns out, only the county bid, so we were glad we were able to step in and save those two hospitals. Between them, they've got 451 hospital beds, which would have otherwise disappeared in all likelihood. Probably more than 1,500 jobs that were also a source of concern as well. We do have, and I have to say the transition's gone remarkably well, very smoothly, and in fact we're already seeing sort of more folks choosing to use O'Connor and St. Louis now that they know that the hospitals are secure. We've had a little bit of scratchiness, if you will, between our two unions. We have RNPA, the Registered Nurses Professional Association, is the nurses union at the county. The folks at O'Connor and St. Louis have historically been represented by the California Nurses Association. As you can understand, both organizations would like to be the designated representative for the combined nursing population. And it's really sort of a contest there. And my view, and I know these labor issues are familiar to you, is it's the right of the workers to bargain, and it's the right of the workers to select their representatives. So I want to sort of step back from that as much as I possibly can, respect the will of the people who work at the county in our health and hospital system, and ultimately that decision is going to be theirs, and whoever they choose, that's who we'll bargain with.
But it's going to be one union for the nurses in the whole system.
It is, and part of the confusion around this issue is we're a public agency, so we deal with state law called the Myers-Milius-Brown Act. I will not bore you or your viewers with that. Folks from the private sector are used to a different set of rules, and so now when we blend these two systems and they all end up under one public agency, different set of rules, and that's part of the challenge, I think, for integrating the two systems.
So this year's theme was health. Last year, your joint theme was resist the Trump administration and the then Congress, and also partnerships. So I want to talk about those things.
Well, on the, for me, the theme was, and I think a lot of people, probably most people, came away with the same perception that you did.
Well, we read the headlines in the newspaper.
Well, that's right. But to me, it wasn't so much about resist as, look, I know we're all talking about the resistance, but one of the things we have to do even as we resist is make progress on our own goals, because we have lost, and I mean lost, if we're so busy dealing with an administration at the national level that we forget, hey, we've got work to do here in Santa Clara County, and we can and should be about doing that work, moving forward, making progress, getting business done. And I don't want us to be so distracted by the whatever in Washington that we're not working on our own agenda.
So are we still resisting, and have we moved forward in the last year?
I think we have. I really do think we have. I think the to me, part of what I was trying to make sure we focused on last year, which was more about sort of how do we go about doing our work as opposed to what is the work, which is what I talked about this year. I think we get more done when we work in partnership with others. Now, it's almost a cliche at this point. It's easier. You can, go lickety-split if you're going all by yourself. But you can get more done if you work in partnership with others. Is it harder? You bet it is. Does it become more complicated? It absolutely does. I'm trying to do a teacher housing project. It's a, modest project. It's, 60 to 90 units in Palo Alto if we can pull it off. But, I've already got the county involved. I've got 5 school districts involved. We've got city funding as well from the city of Palo Alto. So, before we've even picked, and we're about to pick a development partner. So, before we've, put a shovel in the ground, we've already got 8 different partners. That makes it harder, but it means that together we can get more done. And I think that's been my experience and continues to be my experience.
Well, I want to go back to resist just for a minute.
Sure.
And talk about another kind of partnership. And that's with ICE, with the immigration authorities. We just had this murderer arrested in San Jose, who allegedly had been through the county system multiple times, and ICE had made at least a couple of requests to detain, and the county didn't do that. Was that taking resistance too far?
Well, it's more than a little complicated, in part because we have state law now, which we didn't have half a dozen years ago, that's on the books. We have the California Trust Act, the California Values Act, and that limits to some extent what our county can do. We do have a split on our board, or have had a split on our board on this issue. The policy that we have in place was initially adopted back in 2011, and essentially what it said is no cooperation whatsoever with immigration in terms of folks who are in our criminal justice system, and either identifying them, announcing their release date, handing them over, transferring them, whatever. That was revisited at the request of our district attorney, Jeff Rosen, back in 2013, 2014, and ultimately the board decided to maintain the current policy on a 3-2 vote. My own view was, I think it's important, I was one of the dissenters, I should make that clear, I think it's important that we do not cooperate, collaborate with immigration officials in most instances. If somebody's got a parking violation, just to be silly, or even a more serious traffic violation, or even a misdemeanor, or even a garden variety felony, I'm prepared to say, let's keep our distance. It's important that law enforcement keep the trust of the community if they're going to be effective as a law enforcement body. That being said, if someone has committed a serious or violent felony after coming here unlawfully, and they have been convicted, then I think community safety requires that we cooperate to the extent that we find a way to get that person in the hands of immigration officials. Now, that's where I chose to divide the issue, if you will. Ultimately, my point of view did not prevail, and so on a 3-2 vote, we've got the policy in place we have. I continue to think that we can keep our distance from immigration officials on lesser offenses, but that when we get to things that are so clearly a threat to the public, that's when we have to go ahead and find a way to cooperate.
And this might come around again, and you have a new colleague on the board, so that could shift the vote. You also talked a lot about partnerships, and one of the examples of a potential partnership you mentioned last year was with Stanford University on its expansion plan. Last December, they took you to court over that expansion plan. How's that partnership going?
Stanford has asked for approval from the county to build 2,275,000 square feet of development, plus 550 housing units, plus 2,600 beds. That's 3.5 million square feet in total, larger than the new Apple spaceship campus, to put some context on it. Along the way, there's been a little push and shove. I think that's to be expected. Every applicant wants everything they want and wants to give up as little, as close to zero as they possibly can. That's just human nature. It's part of the process. And I am still optimistic that we're going to get to a good place, and that Stanford will continue to be an incredible resource to the area, the wider region, and that we'll make sure they do that without sort of their adverse impacts being borne by the wider community. My mantra on this one is full mitigation, full mitigation, full mitigation.
So that's transportation, housing.
Transportation, housing, open space, flood protection, all these things that, you know, are part of our daily lives. And, you know, the public is understandably skeptical. They've been told by their locally elected officials around the Bay Area for 10, 20, 30 years, hey, we're going to fully mitigate the impacts. Well, transportation problems are worse. Housing prices are higher. So there's an understandable skepticism out there. I think it's on us, meaning me and my colleagues, to make sure if we're going to say yes, that we say yes with full mitigation of any and all impacts that would otherwise be borne by the community.
When do you think it'll come to the board for a decision?
Oh gosh, I had hoped by this June. That is not going to happen, and now I'm hoping that sometime this fall, just because it's time to bring this to a wrap.
Supervisor, we have less than a minute left. So getting back to this year's address, how would you describe the overall state of the county?
Well, I would describe this as a healthy county and getting healthier every day, and I want to make sure that our county continues to do the work that allows people to get healthy, stay healthy. As I say, it is the necessary precondition. You know, if you're not healthy, whatever it is you hope to be or do, not likely to happen. If you got good health, all things are possible.
And is the budget and the pension fund, are they healthy?
For the moment.
For the moment. We'll take it. Joe Simitian, thank you very much.
Thank you, Terry. Good to be with you.
Good. Now it's time for district news with San Jose Vice Mayor Chappie Jones, who represents Council District 1, the West Side. Then, on Where Are They Now, our guest is Jim Cunneen, the last Republican elected to the state legislature from Santa Clara County back in 1994.
Hello, my name is Chappie Jones and I'm your representative for District 1 in West San Jose. This January, I assumed my second term after running unchallenged in November. I was also confirmed as Vice Mayor for San Jose. It's been a big year for District 1. We have seen an increase in development, stronger neighborhood ties, and a rise in collaboration with stakeholders from all districts. I'm happy to introduce the Stevens Creek Promenade, a project located on Stevens Creek Boulevard. This project will be an urban village including dense housing, retail, and workspace with a pedestrian-friendly atmosphere. I'm also proud and excited to announce that the developers are including 88 affordable housing units in this mix. We are working with city staff and various stakeholders to create an innovation zone. This area will be a pilot hub, allowing new tech to be tested, startups to collaborate, and community members to engage with technology. This innovation zone will draw on entrepreneurs, students, and established companies so that they can work in partnership to craft new ideas. With this innovation hub, there is no end to the possibilities. I'm also happy to report on Project Hope. Project Hope started out as a pilot program in the Winchester Cadillac area. Project Hope is now a fully funded service. It combines the elements of community development, neighborhood empowerment, and a broad range of city services to address neighborhood issues. Project Hope has been successful in creating its first ever neighborhood association and continues to host many successful community meetings and neighborhood events. District 1 is a resilient, innovative, and diverse district. We highlight the best of San Jose, and I'm happy to represent you and be your voice on the City Council. If you have concerns or want to talk to me, please feel free to come to my office hours. Visit my website, follow me on social media, or reach out to my team at district1@sanjoseca.gov. Thank you.
Jim Cunneen, welcome to Valley Politics. Nice to be here. So you served in the state legislature from 1994 to the year 2000, elected in 94, served through 2000. Yeah. The last Republican to be elected to the state legislature from Santa Clara County. That's
partisan office. I had the word Republican under my name.
Almost 20 years ago. So we're going to talk about the state of the Republican Party in the county and the state a little bit later. You went on to the Chamber of Commerce, San Jose Silicon Valley Chamber of Commerce for 5 years, I think. What are you doing now?
So after that, I went to the high-tech roots again. Before my election, you'll recall, I worked at Applied Materials, elected to the legislature, ran the chamber for a little over 5 years, and then I went over and ran U.S. government relations for the states for Cisco. Did that for a little more than 2 years, and had lunch up in Sacramento with some old friends, and joined a public affairs firm. And that's where I've been since 2007 with California Strategies. We're a bipartisan public affairs firm. It's headquartered in Sacramento, but I am based in San Jose, and I do all of my work out of San Jose as well.
So you're a lobbyist?
I am sometimes, if the jurisdiction requires it and the issue requires it. So I'm a registered lobbyist in San Jose, the city of Santa Clara, the county of Santa Clara.
You work not only with government, but with other entities?
Yeah, most of my clients are private sector clients or nonprofits, runs the gamut.
So 6 years in the legislature.
Yeah.
Because of term limits.
Right.
You ran for Congress.
Yes.
Unsuccessfully.
Right. Promoted back to the private sector.
Promoted back to the private sector. What do you think of term limits?
Well, I think they're better. I think the term limit law, and I was a term limit baby, right? It passed in 1992. I was elected in 1994. I was that first class that was delivered. And the 6-year term really went by quickly. And I think that there was too much churn in the legislature that caused a little bit of chaos. There were a lot of good elements to term limits, but that term limit was too narrow. So this improvement of giving legislators 12 years in either house, I think gives you enough time to get your sea legs and to really make a more lasting impact. So I'm glad they made that change. And it doesn't mean you couldn't get things done in a short amount of time and get out.
Right.
I think I did. I think some others did.
But there's a learning curve.
There's a learning curve for those who
And there are relationships to build.
That's right. And you have to invest in those to get anything done.
And that can take time.
You can.
Well, what did you get done in 6 years? What do you think was your greatest accomplishment in that time?
Well, if you count getting elected 3 times in a Democratic majority assembly district as a Republican, that was a major accomplishment.
That's a major accomplishment, yeah.
But,
you're the last one to do it.
Yeah, that's right. And in terms of policy accomplishments, I think there are several. One was the improvement to the R&D tax credit. We expanded it most significantly that it had been up to that time.
R&D, research and development.
Research and development tax credit. California is not competitive in many areas of manufacturing, but if you look at the early stages of manufacturing, that R&D phase of manufacturing, we were still competitive. And my view was, let's go and nurture our strengths. So we expanded it from 8 to 12%, and we doubled it from 12 to 24% for university research. And then the other bill I would mention is the bill that I worked with John Vasconcellos on, a giant on the political landscape here. He was having a whale of a time getting a piece of legislation signed by the governor that would wrap around government services for severely emotionally disturbed children. It was a bill championed by Jerry Doyle out of Eastfield, Ming Kwong, and it was a new and innovative public policy approach to, instead of institutionalizing these kids or treating them in sort of missile silos, wrapping around all the social services to keep the family intact. And John came to me and he said, Jim, I can't get this bill signed. I don't know why the governor won't do it. Would you read it? And so I did. I made some suggestions, and he said, this is now your bill. You're going to be the author of it. And we got that bill through the legislature and signed by the governor with very little change to what John was trying to do with Jerry Doyle. So I always mention John because he deserves the lion's share of credit. He worked with Jerry early on. I was the guy that could push it across into the end zone, and we could get it done and get it signed. And it's had this lasting impact on literally thousands of families at this point. I think it's about 12 years now since that legislation was, maybe 15 years since that first legislation was passed. And so it makes me feel good that there was something that was lasting, that got expanded from a local pilot program that Wilson originally signed to now a statewide program. And then the final quick thing I'll mention is the Highway 85 wall. If you recall, when that new freeway was opened up, which was the heart of my district ran through that on both sides of that new freeway. It was opened up in 1995, and 13 people were killed along that freeway through the median. And we got Caltrans to permanently change its policy in suburban areas like that, to never allow a new stretch of highway to be opened without some sort of barrier, median barrier. And it saved a lot of lives over the years. So I feel good about those 3 things and some others.
Well, those are good things to feel good about.
Yes.
Congratulations. They're all pretty big accomplishments. And talking about John Vasconcellos kind of takes me to my next question, because as you know, today the legislature is deeply polarized. Democrats and Republicans don't work together very often, and Democrats don't even have to work with Republicans now because Democrats have an overwhelming majority in the legislature. Yeah, we're becoming a one-party state. But back in your era of the Assembly, you had a Republican governor. You had Republican majorities or near.
For my first term, we were a Republican majority.
For your first term.
And we actually got to be a majority for one of the 2 years. Willie Brown was pretty crafty as that.
Right. But working across the aisle, even with Willie Brown, right?
Oh, yeah, phenomenal legislator.
What was it like? Were you socializing with Democrats? Were Democrats really, I mean, John Vasconcellos came to you with his bill.
Yeah, it was a polarizing time actually, because everyone was shocked that the Republicans had won a majority in 1994. So in 1995, you had Republicans hiding out in the Hyatt because one of them had turned to support the Democrats, if you recall, and Willie was reelected, and we were trying to stop a quorum on the floor to allow that to happen. There was a lot of chaos associated with that. The clerk of the assembly had a doctor's note not to be there because he didn't want to make some rulings that day, I guess. You know, it was a chaotic time. It was a partisan time. We were encouraged not to interact, but some of us still did. And once things settled down, that center could hold again. And in an evenly divided legislature like that, I mean, we had a majority by one vote, right, by 1996. Kurt Pringle became Speaker. We lost the majority of the next year. But the partisan divide was always much more narrow, which gave Republicans more clout. And moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans could really sort of guide policy. Even though the Republicans were a majority in 95 and 96, we were still a pro-choice majority because of Bruce McPherson, Brooks Firestone, me, Steve Kuykendall, Marilyn Brewer. There were a handful of Republicans that were pro-choice and moderate. So the center could hold and we could figure out ways to have relationships, but I wouldn't let that polarization stop me from reaching out to Al Alquist and John Vasconcellos. Those guys were giants as I was growing up here in the Valley. I was serving in the legislature with them at that time, and I went to them very early on to try to learn as much as we can. And I think I may hold the title of the first Republican to jockey an Al Alquist bill on the floor of the Assembly.
Al Alquist was our local state senator
senator
for decades, Democrat, liberal Democrat.
They knew how to work that legislature, and I think I was so successful in making sure my bills were able to pass and get to the governor's desk and be signed by a Republican governor, but through the Democratic State Senate, because I reached out and made those relationships.
Well, times have changed. As you just said, we're becoming, or we have become, a one-party state. Not only with Democratic dominance in the legislature, but currently 17% of the voters in Santa Clara County are registered Republicans. 24% statewide are registered Republicans. More people are registering no party than Republican. Is your party, well, is this your former party? Are you still a Republican?
I left the Republican Party.
You left the
June,
Republican Party.
And the time had come. I think the Trump presidency was a signal to me that I just couldn't find a home in the Republican Party anymore. None of my positions had changed. I'm proud to have supported Wilson's tax cuts. I'm proud to have supported Prop 13. And I'm proud to be a pro-choice and a pro-environment and a pro-gun control Republican. None of my positions changed, but I could operate in the Republican Party as a moderate and feel good about my home. I could no longer feel that way. And the immigration issue, the bigotry that I could see within the party was a concern, and so I left. I don't condemn anybody. I think there's some really great people locally in the party and statewide in the party, but the national party was just a bridge too far for me, and I left.
Got a couple of city council members also leave the party,
right.
Dev Davis and Johnny Khamis.
Very courageous because they're current office holders, so Dev and Johnny deserve great
Or maybe
praise.
Courage isn't so much as ambition. If you want to run for something in Santa Clara County, maybe having Republican as your label is no longer an advantage. Do you think the party is doomed in California and Santa Clara County?
I think that it's hurt badly, and I think there is room for a new second party to arise, not a third party. The Republican Party now is a third party. They're below decline to state. So we need a new second party, and I'm interested in that, and I'm exploring that.
And what would that look like?
I think it would look like centrists from both the Democratic and the Republican Party that could come together around some sort of fiscal moderation with a progressive social aspect to it. I think that would be appeal to a majority of Californians, and there are people that are talking about forming such a second party right now, and those are in early discussions, but you know, the jury's out for the Republican Party. What does it look like post-Trump? I think he will be defeated in 2020. Let's see what happens to see if the party comes back to its senses. In the meantime, in California, I think it's so far down right now, it's going to be difficult to resurrect, although there are good people, and let's give them a shot post-Trump. But in the meantime, there's a lot of us that are looking at a second party.
You think there are enough moderate Democrats to come over as well? You think
I think
there's
there
enough
may be.
dissatisfaction in that
the
party?
Democratic Party, the only thing masking the dysfunction in the Democratic Party and the lurch to the left is the chaos in the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party has a lot of divides right now and a lot of fissures. And I think if there was a centrist party, a party in the center truly, that there would be attractive to a number of moderate Democrats as well.
Part of the problem for something like that is once people start voting for one party, they tend to continue to do that. There aren't many people like you who've actually dropped the party. And I think it'll be tough to convert some of those, particularly Latino, Asian,
because in electoral
younger
politics,
voters.
Having a base is helpful. When you can rely on a certain percentage of the vote and then add others, that's the way to victory. And so it's very tough without. And so to give Johnny and Deb some real credit, it was an act of courage in that they became independents and they don't have a country. But let's see what happens. I think politics are really dynamic right now.
Okay, let's see what happens. Jim Cunneen, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me on.
We'll be back next month with San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo, who will update us on the state of the city. Meanwhile, you can catch up on previous shows on our website at creatvsj.org or on YouTube by searching for CreaTV San Jose. And you can let us know what you think about our show and suggest future topics or guests by email at valleypolitics@creatvsj.org, on Twitter at @valley_politics, and by following us on Facebook. And now that's all, folks. Thanks for watching Valley Politics. See you next time.